Ah, London. The sights, the sounds. I love it. The only problem, it's just too sunny. Just way too much daylight here. If only there was an even darker, shadier London, possibly filled with horrible eldritch creatures and abominations against nature. Ho ho ho, said failbetter games as they made the hit game, Fallen London. In this game, you use your watchful, shadowy, dangerous, and persuasive to make your way through the secret dangerous underground city of Fallen London. The game is pretty good and free, so I recommend it. But failbetter looked at it and went, we could do better. So they set out to make Sunless Seas, where you use your iron, mirrors, veils, pages, and heart to make your way around the secret dangerous underground ocean around Fallen London. The game dumps you unceremoniously on a small boat in the harbor of Fallen London with nothing else and asks you who you are and what do you want to accomplish. I chose to be a disgraced priest who has turned to the seafaring life, and like all good priests, my ambition was to get as filthy rich as possible. This would be tough as besides my dinky vessel, all I had was some fuel, a little bit of supplies for feeding the crew, and a small book that teaches me how to play the game. No tutorial, this is the sequel to a text-based adventure after all. After selling said book and familiarizing myself with the controls, I gathered up my sailors and set sail on the undersea and… Actually, you know what? I really dig the mysterious, dark, Lovecraftian vibe of the game, but sometimes it's hard to take it serious when I'm feeding my crew Zzoup, of all things, so no more Z words from here. Anyway, in my first outing, I began exploring the vast dark map, found a small crab, killed a small crab, ran into a large shark, nearly got killed by a large shark. I thought I could take him on for all of 3 seconds before I learned I really couldn't. A big part of this game is understanding where you stand in the pecking order, which is usually near the bottom, and fighting should only be used sparingly against the horrors of the undersea, as even if you survive, that doesn't mean it was worth it.
I got it raw.
I hobbled back and was greeted in London by a very courteous and not at all suspicious looking man. One thing I really like about this game is the colorful characters you meet. You never actually get anyone's names, just a descriptive title, and sometimes one of these very charming portraits. Very cool. After a completely charitable gift of fuel and supplies from the not at all untrustworthy man, I was able to explore out further. One real challenge of this game is balancing all of the supplies in your hold. You need fuel and supplies, but the more you have, the more you weigh, creating more of a need for fuel and taking up more of your valuable space. You can try using a smaller crew to cut down on supplies, but the undersea is a dangerous place and you will want extra crew around once your A team starts dropping. So I recommend buying the bare minimum of fuel and supplies to get to where you need and back to keep some space open for weapons and goods. What happens when you run out of these things? Well, that's where the game gets interesting. Completely running out of fuel will lead to a game over, but you could try burning extra supplies for fuel or wait for a good Samaritan to come by and offer to tow you for the low price of your entire ship. Running out of supplies is even more interesting. With my newfound freedom, I explored to the north, reached the top of the map, found a city where everybody communicates and questions, and the nearby jail colony of people imprisoned for answering questions. Now, with a mostly blank map, there was a whole world to explore, but instead I wondered, what if I go off the map? So I sailed further north still, and sure enough, off the map I went. This was a bad idea. By the time I regained consciousness, half my crew were dead, all of my supplies were missing, and my ship was compelled to some mysterious port far from London.
What kind of place is this?
The good news is, there was a nearby church to help me out and resupply. Being a religious man myself, I attended their service. It turns out their gospel was cannibalism, their holy book was a cookbook, and their body of Christ was made out of the body of man. I actually had a very pleasant time there, but it did give me a lingering taste for flesh. This will be important later. Wanting no more to do with the north, on my next outing, I headed the exact opposite direction, with 2 goals in mind. The telephone hasn't been invented yet, so the London Admiralty relies heavily on sea captains like yourself for news of the outside world. They will accept any and all port reports you can bring them, and will be especially interested in certain islands from time to time. This is the most reliable source of income, and my course was set for the island known as the Khan's Heart as soon as I could find it. Secondly, the mustached man politely requested I find a constable that has been fighting crime, and bring her to his employer, any means necessary. Wanting to repay my good friend, I agreed, and on Khan's Heart, I found her. Here, my 5 stats would be important, as I could not simply blast her with my cannons. Due to my priestly background, I was not a very competent captain. I was not especially tough, sneaky, or observant, but what I was good at was having a big heart. The worst Captain Planet ability was actually very helpful, and I was able to convince the constable to peacefully come with me to the well-intentioned man.
Okay, get in.
Back in London, I turned in my port reports for cash and my hostage for even more cash. And by cash, I mean echoes, which might be solid currency or might be fragments of secrets. Not sure, and not to be mistaken for secrets. The resource needed to upgrade your stats, or fragments, which are your experience for exploring and doing other things that builds into secrets. After handing over the constable, the bruiser explained she is his boss's daughter, and he was just trying to get her home. So he really was a sweetheart all along. And then he asked me to smuggle illegal romantic literature. I mean, he doesn't look like that for no reason. Not long later, I met a man with an incredibly large head. He said he was suffering from a living sigil on his head, which gave him great pain and had stolen most of his memories in exchange for great knowledge of the seas. He was clearly mentally unwell and suffering, so I took him aboard and made him my first mate. The source of his abilities were questionable at best, but I couldn't argue with the stat boost he provided my ship. Most of your officers are at some point or another will ask you for difficult favors, but might be very worth it. Or it might not be at all. One of my gunners was an immortal who wanted my help committing suicide. When I did, you know what happened? She just died. No special boon for completing the quest. The undersea is truly a sunless place. At this point, I was really jonesing for an upgrade to my ship. I was able to comfortably sail around the nearby islands without getting too many of my crew killed, but it took an entire ship's worth of supplies to sail out much further. On top of that, my engine and my weapons were feeling very inadequate for dealing with the further out dangers of the sea. Have I mentioned the eldritch horrors yet? I do not like the eldritch horrors, not one bit. Some are tough enemies I can't quite deal with yet, others I can't even properly look at without nearly dying. Sure, I could lose it all to turn around and get a good look, but I kinda am liking this run, so I choose instead to play it safe. At this point, most everything is faster and stronger than me, so stealth is my only real option. By turning off my flashlight, I could be a lot harder to spot and can slip by unnoticed, within reason. An added benefit is this consumes much less fuel.
Captain, this be the engine. It be powering our vessel.
Very good, quartermaster, and that one there?
Aye, that be powering our flashlight, sir.
Oh, well, that seems excessive. Let's turn that off.
I wouldn't do that.
The other consequence of turning your lights off is it gets dark, and the dark is scary. And the only thing worse than a dead sailor is a scared one. I can't really blame them. Sailors are already a superstitious lot. I can only imagine what it'd be like with actual horrors lurking about. Let your horror meter go too high and expect nightmares, delusions, murders, and mutinies. This might not surprise you, but having a delusional and murderous crew can be very disruptive and could cost a lot of the supplies you are trying to cheap out on by turning off your flashlight. It's a good way to quickly fall into a death spiral as you lose fuel that would have kept your lights on, leading to even more fear and worse random events. When this happens, you better hope you are near a safe harbor where you could reduce stress, or you could start thinking about your next captain's name. On a less horror-filled note, I found an island populated by intelligent guinea pigs and rat settlers. Pretty cute. The rats wanted an island to call their own, and the guinea pigs wanted more rat skin coats. Less cute. I used my natural physical advantage of owning several cannons on my ship to defeat the guinea pigs and start the construction of a rat paradise. Every chance I had, I sailed by the island and assisted them with supplies or advising them with internal issues. Over time, I really felt like we were building something great. Then 2 human factions discovered the island. The rats asked which side should they ally themselves with. I told them, none. Us rat kind would fight off the invaders and declare true independence. It wasn't long after all the rats were dead and the island was a smoking ruin. Damn, this game is really dark. I kept visiting through the rest of my run and the rats never became less dead. I really dig how your choices have a real impact on this world, but damn. Just this once, I really wish it didn't. After many adventures, I visited an island of disgraced mailmen compelled to sort all the mail that supernaturally washes ashore. I saw an island of people who believe they must be covered in light from the day they are born, or they will fall from grace. And an island of semi-intelligent monkeys with a fondness for human souls. After recovering my first officer's sordid past, and with great effort, I made my way to the corner of the map to the King Eater's castle. Here, I performed a pretty horrifying ritual on my first mate, scooping away all of his unwanted humanity, leaving behind an empty shell, more sigil than man, but with really fantastic stats. Unfortunately, my adventures had finally taken me too far and I had no supplies or money to buy more. I desperately raced my way back to London, but the hunger had already taken hold of me and my men. I had to make a tough choice, or I would have, if I didn't already develop a serious taste for human flesh by this point and readily singled out the tastiest member of my crew and fed him to the ship. Now, this kinda horrified my men, and it really scared them when we had to do it 3 more times, but we barely hobbled our way back and all was well. I had upgraded my ship, my engine, my weapons, and was ready to take on some eldritch horrors.
Boat.
Okay, so I wasn't really, but I was ready to visit the Avid Horizon once more with a man I was selling expensive supplies to. We opened up the gate to the north. Here we could finally go beyond the map. He informed me if I go with him, I would never be able to return. My dream of becoming filthy rich would never come about, but I would gain so much more. With a moment of hesitation, I took that step forward into the unknown, and the tale of Minister Clean was finished. Death in this game is completely final, but thankfully, I had an heir who would inherit some of my belongings, including knowledge of what lied beyond, and would have a much better start than my first captain. So there it is, that's the game. There's a ton more to say about it, and so much I haven't discovered, but overall, a very fun game. I don't recommend it at all. Play the sequel, it's much better. You could drift a space train. Very cool. Also, if you like this video, please consider subscribing. I'm a very small YouTuber making niche stuff, so it's hard to get noticed. Okay, thanks, bye.